Hello,
Yeah,
this is take two. We're trying again. Facebook is having some technical difficulties today, so if you could see what we were just doing, I'm sorry. Um, oh, now I see it.
yeah, now it's there.
Now it's there, but I don't know if that's the one that I'm doing right now or not.
It is.
Okay, cool. Now I see two now, so I am. Anyway, all right, I'll quit fussing around with it. So anyway, we are talking about family stories today. I was talking about my super cool mug, which is not hugely family related, but I did get it on a family vacation to Disneyland in September, and my daughter thought that it was fitting. It says famous on the back. She thinks I'm famous, which is cute. And I have a matching shirt that goes with it. And I think it's like the best thing to wear, kind of ironically, especially when I'm like grumpily on a deadline. So it's a favorite of mine. And then yeah, so that's all about my mug.
My mug is my Cardinals mug because today was supposed to be opening day, and it's not because it's not. So we watched, but me and my kids watched they rebroadcast a very fun game from 2011. So we watched it this morning. So I got to pretend we were watching baseball.
That's cool. I mean, the rebroadcasting and stuff. So is baseball something that you have always watched, that you watched growing up?
Yes. My dad was a huge sports fan. And I don't know that baseball was necessarily his favorite, but it was always mine. And we actually lived in Iowa for quite some time where there's no professional sports team at all. So I don't remember watching a lot of games then, but then we lived in Chicago for a while and followed the White Sox, and then we moved to St. Louis and became Cardinals fans.
That's very cool. We don't have a lot in the way of professional sports in Oregon. We have the Blazers, so that could be disputed as any professional sports at all. But we also have a soccer team. So mostly everybody. So mostly, I think the sports are kind of. Mine won't even let me share this video. Ah, stop! I don't want to hear myself talk. I'm not going to be able to share it. That's fine. I was going to put it in my group, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, yeah, so we watched like a lot of college football. And that's kind of like a thing that my family does together, but like didn't do so much when we've got a Cubs fan in the house.
Oh, boo.
So yeah, we're Oregon is big on the college ball because that is like what we have. So like the Civil War, Ducks versus Beavers, that's a big thing. We've got banners that go up all over town, and my favorite is like the bumper stickers that say "A House Divided" and has like the two different schools on it. So I love the kind of love the not so friendly rivalry, which I've written into books, because it's very real and very fun. And like at my kids' schools, they'll do like canned food drives, and the Ducks fans put their cans in one barrel and the Beavers fans put theirs in the other, and so you like try to win, see whose fans are better, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, speaking of our Cubs fans, the Cardinals Cubs are big rivalry. And I have a lot of family from Iowa, which is actually big Cubs territory, and also Chicago. So like I had a T-shirt for my son that said "Too cute to be a Cubs fan" when he was little. But lots of I have a couple of cousins in particular who do a lot of trash talking at Christmas about the Cardinals and Cubs, regardless of how either team does. Like it does not actually matter how good your team is. Like
reality is irrelevant when it comes to
irrelevant.
It's fandom is not based in any way in reality. The Ducks were really good once, and we Chip Kelly. Why? How'd the NFL work out? Did it? Yeah, I'll say it. Still mad. No, I actually had to like step way back from football because I get so angry. Like so angry when my team loses. I'm so competitive. It like ruins my day.
My college roommates have some things to say about how I behaved during the playoffs every every year. Um, Specifically, I remember, and it was in the early 2000s. The Cardinals lost to the Mets, I think, in the National League Central. No, in the National League Championship. So like they would have gone to the World Series or they would have done something. And my dad said he would buy tickets if they had gotten to the next step. And so they lost, and I was so mad because I've actually never been to a playoff game in person. So I'm still bitter about that, and I still hate Mike Piazza. Stephanie asked where in Iowa. All over the place. I was born in Ottumwa. I lived in the Quad Cities for a few years. Other places, Cedar Falls. That was when I was really little, and we bounced around a lot. But I have family in Burlington and Ottumwa still, and go back there and visit.
Yeah, I think it's all a good. This is a good starting place because we were just thinking we would talk about like just general kind of family history stuff and try not to step on anyone's toes. Not any of the living. Like I feel ancestral stories are fair game. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you guys are then very Midwestern, yes? Like
very
you feel very.
Yes, most of my ancestors came from whatever country straight to Iowa. There's a few other like pit stops along the way, but very Iowan. And then I'm actually, so my parents are both the youngest of three, and they're both the only people to like move out of Iowa of their siblings. So, but still, even moving around a lot, like it was Nebraska, Illinois, Iowa, and Missouri are the four states that I have lived in. So I have never been coastal in any way, shape, or form. Like back in the 1700s, my grandma's one of the side lived in Maine. That's about it.
I can't. You don't strike me as a seagoing people.
No, farm. Very farmy.
I mean, at some point, some of my ancestors must have been in Independence, Missouri, to travel the Oregon Trail.
True. Yes.
So yeah, we did a lot of ancestry stuff, and like what I think is kind of interesting is my mom's family is very Midwestern. Like came in probably like Virginia and like came in just straight, and like straight in the middle. And my dad's family was like a pack of Yankees, Pennsylvania, and then kind of went over to Montana. So started going coastal. But my mom was born in Kansas, so her family is Midwestern, but and there's like kind of I don't know. I think it's an interesting family history. It's sad, but my grandmother, so my mom's mom, whose name was Lila Pauline, which is actually the name of my heroine in Cowboy for All Seasons. She got married when she was really young. Her parents died when she was a little girl, and she was raised by an aunt and uncle, and like the siblings were split up. It's kind of that. I feel like that was really common back then. And so the sisters were with one aunt and uncle, and the brother went somewhere else. And my grandma got married at a very young age. She was 16 or so when she got married. And then her husband went and fought in World War II. He was killed on D-Day. And my grandma was widowed at 17 and had a baby. So she was living in Kansas. She was a single mother. She was a war widow, and then eventually married my mom's dad, and had some more kids. And then he went to California to look for work and ended up taking work welding on a shipyard in Southern California. And that is kind of how that part of my family made it to the West Coast. So they're really the only ones that came out that way. And then my dad's family, it was kind of a slow, my grandpa's from they're from like Montana, Idaho, that kind of area, and then like went to Washington. And then when my dad was little, they came to Oregon. So kind of been coastal as far back as my grandparents, I guess.
That's kind of funny because on my mom's side, my grandpa and my grandma actually moved to California for a while because my grandpa got work there.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly how the story goes, but he either like lost a job or like he had to do something to get this job and he didn't want to do it. And he said he came home to their like apartment in California and was like, "Do you just want to move back home to Ottumwa?" And he said that my grandma like got up and immediately started packing her suitcases. Um,
Conversely, my grandma really liked California because there were like bars there. But this is where we get into some family history that I'm trying not to step on anyone's toes. But she hit the scene for a bit there in California. That was a little bit more impressive than small town Kansas and kind of being a war widow and then a very impoverished mother with lots of children. So I think she was pretty starstruck by California. I mean, it depends on where you go. My family went to San Diego, so it was really pretty.
I think I don't remember where my grandpa was, LA or San Diego or somewhere in there.
Yeah. Well,
but I mean,
so my mom was born in Kansas, but grew up down there. And this is where I'm like, my parents are kind of a small town romance. So my dad is one of 5 brothers and grew up in a small town called Gold Hill, Oregon. And he was born in Washington, but they came down here when he was really little. And he does music and stuff like that. So when my mom came here to visit someone that she had gone to high school with, and saw my dad doing music, and my mom was raised by just her dad and her brothers. So she again got and she was from the big city, from Southern California, and then she came up to Oregon to visit, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, there are trees! I heard there were no trees left in the world, crazy."
That was, remember, my my husband's grandmother was like, "There's no trees in Oregon."
I have been trying, since you told me that, I have been trying to figure out where she went, and I'm like, she must have gone to
I don't even know that she ever went there.
Okay, because I was like, if she went to Smith Rock or something in Eastern Oregon, because that's high desert, but you don't have to go very far to find trees even there. I'm like, we're lousy with trees. That's all there is pine trees. So no, my mom was like, whoa, there's trees. And, but I just heard this story. My dad just told me this story, was that when, right before she left to get in her car to drive back to California, she turned to him and she said, "It's really too bad that I have to leave, because if I would have stayed, I think I would have fallen in love with you."
Oh, man.
Got in her car.
What, Peggy?
I know, right? Got in her car to drive away, and then the car broke down. And she ended up stuck here and had to contend with that bomb that she dropped. But all worked out well for them because they've been married for about 40 years. But but I was like, I had never heard that story before. My dad was like, "Do you know what your mom said to me right before she left?" And I was like, "No." But again, they're such a small town romance. My mom is she would tell you she's 5'5", but she's lying. She's 5'4". And my dad is 6'4". And so my brother and I kind of split the difference, and neither of us are, well, he's pretty tall. I'm not that tall, but, I got some height from my dad's side. My cousins are all we, and if you're watching, I'm sorry, but it is true. They're all 5 feet tall. They're very cute. Cause there's just not a lot of height on my mom's side of the family. My dad's family is big, but, anyway, yeah, so that's how my mom ended up in Oregon, and that's kind of then how I ended up being born here. But, yeah, I think that's a pretty good story. I wouldn't have had the guts to do that, but then the car breaking down too. So good.
That is.
And I feel and my mom's not real. I mean, no, my mom seems very soft-spoken, but she does always she's good at getting what she wants. So. So that's kind of how our migration occurred. My family's a little more mobile, but yeah, I'm not. Yeah. I've only lived in one state, so you have me beat.
Yeah, and I will say my sisters don't live here. I'm the only one who stayed in Missouri. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've been doing my husband's family's genealogy, and they've been here since like the early 1700s. So
Wow.
yeah, his mom's side definitely, and then his dad's side was more Oklahoma, but still very one place, stay there. All of his siblings still live here. Um, but yeah, my generation got a little bit more mobile.
Yeah, that's so you have, I mean, I know this obviously, but we're talking for the video. You have two sisters.
I do. I'm the oldest of three girls. So like it's funny too because I so just had my dad was the only guy in the house. And he only had sisters. And my husband also only had sisters. So I've always been around very well trained men in the like bathroom arena. Like they put the seats down because they were taught from birth. Um, and obviously my children, I just have two boys and they, it's like the Wild West in there. So I haven't quite figured out how to tame them because I'm suddenly outnumbered after always being,
I'll have my mom get in touch with you because she, like, I think, well, my dad is one of five boys, so I think my grandma must have thrown down.
yeah.
Because my grandma lived in a house with six boys. And I think that, and when my dad was born, so my dad's the middle child, he can tell you a lot about all his trauma. He,
Middle children.
I know, and he's the middle of the five boys. So, but he basically, when he was born, she cried and gave up hope of ever having a girl. So, she was like, "No, it's never gonna happen for me." And so, I mean, she got a lot of daughters-in-law out of the deal. Later, she just had to wait for the payoff. But like, so yeah, I think she must have like really, really thrown down. And like, I can still see like my grandma is in her 90s and still like my son, I remember him coming up like behind her to like take her, like he was trying to take her soda from her. And she like didn't even look and she just like moved it. Like, my grandma raised five kids. Like she's not messing around. Like she knows all your tricks. Linda says, it's nice to hear your family stories and sharing with your fans. My grandma just died at age 97, and she told all her grandchildren so many stories about her life while I was growing up. I'll always remember her stories. I'm sorry for your loss, Linda. I think that's what I like. I love stories, and the older that I get, like the more family stories kind of mean. Like I just wrote my second women's fiction, and I used a lot of my grandma's story in it, like being a war widow and things like that, because like I want to be able to like pass those things on in a bigger way. Like it occurred to me that we're losing that generation, I guess, like that has those stories. And it's so when my mom and I went to, I guess it was 3 years ago now, I did the signing at Nora Roberts' bookstore, and we went to DC, and I'd never been there before. And we went to the World War II Memorial, and they were actually honoring a bunch of veterans while we were there. So there were like a bunch of these World War II vets there getting medals and things like that. And I was like, I mean, obviously we were just weeping, but like, it was just kind of an amazing thing. So it's like, they're getting on in years. And like my grandpa, my dad's dad fought in World War II. My mom's half brother's dad did. My uncle's dad did. And he was killed. So it's like, that's just like, I don't know. It's such an important thing, like that history and sharing those stories and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I have two grandparents still living. One is 90 and one is 95. He'll be 96.
Wow.
This summer, and he fought in World War II. And so, they lived through like the Depression, and they lived through World War II, and they lived through like basically, I think of how much the world has just changed in my lifetime, which isn't that long. And they've like seen it all. So I love my grandpa is an amazing storyteller. I'm not sure that it's all 100% true. It's been exaggerated perhaps over the years, but he has a very interesting life and a very hard life. His dad died very tragically when he was just really little, like in the middle of the Depression. Like he was a mechanic and a car fell on him while he was working on it. And that's how his dad died. And I think he was like 5. So like his mom really struggled during the Depression as a single mom, and he like hitchhiked to California to be with his brother when he was like 16 and dropped out of school, which he says he dropped out of high school because he didn't like gym class. He said the gymnasium smelled, so he just couldn't bear it. So that's why he quit school, allegedly. Um, but yeah, so, I mean, just amazing things that you can't even think about people doing. Linda says her grandma had 13 kids. Oh my God.
That's
13.
crazy. That's too
I
many
didn't do
kids.
it.
I mean,
I
that's
didn't do
amazing.
it.
Yeah, I had a big family.
No, yeah.
I'm also an oldest child. Like I was just thinking about the siblings because you're an oldest, two sisters. I have a brother, just one, and we are quite close. He has not moved far away, and his wife is the oldest of five kids, and my husband is the oldest of five kids, which I think is kind of funny.
That is kind of funny. And I do think it's funny because I don't put a whole lot of like store into birth order stuff because I don't really fit the traditional oldest child. Um, like I'm bossy, but like I don't like try to fix people's problems for them or take care of people. I'm more of a
Why are you
like
talking about me? Why are you doing that?
Some people don't. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel attacked.
but I married a middle, um, which actually is very fitting. And he's the only boy. Um, but my parents are both the youngest kids. Like I actually don't have a lot of oldests in my family, like direct line, but I am friends with a lot of oldest of however many kids. Like
Yeah,
most of my closest friends were always the oldest
yeah.
in the family.
I am a very typical oldest, and my brother is a very typical youngest. Like I'm like, oh, like I'm so like people pleaser. Like I just, whoa, what's beeping? Hopefully we didn't like lose our connection. The world. Oh, there you are. Back.
There we go. I don't know
Awesome.
what happened.
I don't know what happened either. Anyway, all right. No, I was just saying like I'm a very very typical like oldest, very people pleaser. My brother is a very typical youngest. Like he's kind of like, oh, like I'm just gonna do what I want. That's cool. Like I'm, which I kind of admire. I have to say because I'm like, no, I need approval. I can't just go off and do what I want. I want to. And then, but then, like the problem is, like my husband and I are both oldest, and so it's like we're like always trying to be like the most best and like do the best job and like have the highest approval rating. And it is like, yeah, it's tough because you're like, my dog is barking. Because you want to be like, I'm like, we're always waiting for the other one to like throw a parade, and the parade never comes. And you're like, I'm not gonna throw you a parade. You haven't thrown me a parade. Where's my parade? Oldest child problems.
I am not waiting for a parade.
Are you not like? Well, I mean, we're just like both first class martyrs. Like, hugely.
Like yeah, my husband is just a typical middle, like maybe not typical, but he's like the class clown, like peace wants to keep the peace going and stuff like that. So we don't really clash on that score.
Yeah. Sorry, I have like a delay over here. This video is determined to be dramatic.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will persevere. I'm reading a comment. That's great. Stephanie said, my brother's 9 years older and we've always gotten along very well. He even coached my youth softball team. We got the best of both worlds. We got treated like an only child, but still had a sibling. Yeah, my brother and I we're 2.5 years apart, so we fought a lot.
Yeah, I have, my one sister is 2.5 years younger, and my other sister is 9.5 years younger. I fought a lot with my middle and my baby sister. I mean, I was kind of like, I wouldn't say I was out of the house, but I don't remember fighting with her as much because I was just so much older. But I do remember, it's so funny to think, I've been with my husband now for 16 years. So like when we first started dating, she was like a little kid.
Yeah,
I still remember we took her to Princess Diaries too. Um,
that's a terrible movie.
yeah. But now she's an adult, like with an adult job and an adult boyfriend and like a life. And
Yeah.
it's kind of weird, but I'd say we get along pretty well. My kids now like to play Animal Crossing online with her because she got
I know it's funny too because I am not that much older than my brother, but I was like kind of a child bride, and had kids quite young, and he didn't. So he's not a lot younger than me, but I feel like he became an adult a lot later.
yeah,
And so he's married now, and he has his first, who just turned 1, and my oldest son is almost 14. So like we just have we've had a very different like scale of adulthood, and he was 16 when I got married. And so it's kind of the same thing where my husband and I have also been together for 16 years, married for almost 15. And my brother was a teenager at the time. And so it's like, my husband feels close to him like a brother because it's like, they've been in each other's lives for so long. And I do feel like he was so the like young uncle when my kids were little, like the
yeah.
young, like single uncle. And and my kids were the only grandkids, for my parents for a really long time. So, but then we all enjoy having the little baby who's walking now. It's crazy.
Yeah, my kids were the first grandkids on both sides for my oldest for quite a few years. Um, so they got irrevocably spoiled.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, my sister just had a baby last year. Um, and my husband's sisters have had daughters who are both, one's 4 and one's 3. So that's been fun too, since I only have boys. But we do joke that since my mom only had girls, she's only going to get grandsons, which so far is the case.
That's funny. That will be funny. There's a thing where in my husband's family, they all have like 2 boys and a girl, and we have 2 boys and a girl. And my husband's oldest of 5, and that's how the birth order is in his. It's 2 boys, a girl, a boy, and a girl.
Like my parents were like the opposite. Like my mom had 2 older brothers, my dad had 2 older sisters. So it's kind of funny, and I think it is funny too because my husband only has sisters. My husband likes to, kind of mess with them a little bit, and they're like, "What is this? This is not what I'm used to." Not that we didn't fight; it's just the way girls fight, and a girl and a boy fight is completely different. Like his fighting is goofy.
Yeah. Fighting. Well, and that is funny because like we bickered, but I actually don't think that it's the same. Even like brothers or sisters, like a brother and a sister, I think it's a really particular. It's not the same kind of sibling rivalry.
No,
because you don't really want all of each other's stuff, and you don't really want to hang out with each other's friends either. So it's not like I had, friends who had like sisters, and it was like, well, you don't hang out with me and my friends and all this kind of stuff. And he did that a little bit when he was little, but like for the most part did not want to hang out with my friends, like wanted to torment them the way that he tormented me. And we did awful things to him, like just awful. Like, I had a friend, we used to like dress him up, and he was such a pretty, sorry if you're watching, Kyle, he was such a pretty little boy. He really was. And like, This was never a problem for me. Like, I was the one, and this is always the thing when you have a brother, though. You're always like, what? They always get the long eyelashes. So
Yeah,
I have always had like straight brown hair. My brother had like white blonde and the most like flowing mullet you've ever seen in your life in ringlets. And the reason he had a mullet is because my mom couldn't bring herself to cut the curls off.
beautiful hair.
So
Yeah.
yeah, he did. He had beautiful hair, and people were always like, "Is he a boy?" Which is how my oldest son was always. Like, people were like, "I know you have him like in a dump truck T-shirt, but like, is he a boy? Really? Like, is he a boy? Because he's so pretty." And that's how my brother was. And so we used to like put makeup and like sun hats on him, and like have him have tea parties with us. And
Yeah, we did that to my male cousins that were younger because that was
yeah,
like our only outlet with that for sure. But yeah, I mean, like I remember, like we would get the same. Like you can't win when you have like the same gender because like you get the same things and you're like, why did we get the same things? Then you get something different. You're like, that theirs is cooler than mine. Why did they get the brunette? Like I remember, I would always get like the brunette Barbie or the brunette doll, and I'm like, I don't want the brunette. Like I know I'm brunette, but I want the blonde one. And even though my sister is also brunette, somehow she would always end up with the blonde one. And I'd be like, that's not fair.
there's those injustices that you remember forever, and this is my same injustice that I bring up all the time. Is that I was not allowed to get my driver's license until I was 17. And my brother got his when he was 16. And my mom's always like, we didn't let you get your licenses till you were 17. And I'm like, false. That is not true. He got his license when he was 16, and you wouldn't let me do it, and I was the good one. Because to be clear, I was the good one.
Well, yes, the oldest always are.
It's true. My husband is very much the good one in his family.
I would actually say in my husband's family, the youngest might be the super good one.
Mm-hmm.
But really, in fairness, like we were all, my side and his side, like we're all pretty goody two shoes, like not
Yeah.
causing trouble.
I won't say anything about my husband's siblings. However, what I will say is when his brother came to visit, I was like, tell me that, like, I've tried to get his younger brothers to tell me, like the dirt on him, because I'm like, there's no way he's actually, like, was actually always nice. Like, he was the oldest brother. He had to antagonize you. Like, he had to. And so I have asked both of his younger brothers, like, so, but, like, be real. Like, was he super mean? And, like, they literally were both like, no. He is never mean. He is the nicest brother in the entire world. He is the best man. And I'm like, either he really emotionally scarred you guys and you're still afraid, or he was really nice. And I just don't know. Like, for me, like, I'm the oldest and I'm a girl, and I knew that my brother was going to outgrow me. I mean, he's 6'1". And it's like, I knew that was going to happen. There was no way I was going to stay taller. So it's a mental game when you have a younger brother. You've got to scare them. You've got to emotionally scar them so that they never think they can come after you physically.
I will say my sister is taller. My middle sister is taller than me, and like, but she never like, in somewhat typical middle child fashion, she was a people pleaser, and I knew that and used that against her quite frequently. But Sheila said she had to be in for her younger brothers, and that's funny because my husband and his sisters, they like argue about who had it worse, as we all do. And he like got to sit out at all hours from hockey, and the girls had to be in. And he was like, "Oh, but Dad helped you buy a car, and I had to do it on my own." And like, so it's like that constant like, you're always sitting there comparing what they did or got or whatever, and always think the other one had the easier haul.
Always. Except I don't know that my brother thinks I had it easier, and I don't think he cares.
I mean, there's always that. Like, I actually don't care. There's like one thing I'm bitter about, and it was that my sister got Nintendo, and my mom never let us have one. Like, my very youngest sister got a Nintendo when she was a kid, and we weren't allowed to have one. My only bitter thing, and I even don't really care because I'm not a big like video game person. That was like a principle of the thing,
Totally.
type thing. But mostly, I remember in high school, my sister like would try to start fights with me. She would be like, I have better grades than you, and I'm in these higher classes. And then just like, okay, I don't care. Because I'm only competitive if it's something I really want. So if it's not something I care about or want, I could care less. Like you could be like, I am the champion of the world, and I'll be like, okay, I don't care. Like if I don't care about it, I'm not gonna sit there and care about it. Or some people have to win whether they care about it or not.
Yeah. I would say and now I watch my kids do this, and it's definitely my karma. Like, my brother didn't have any chill, like, in the moment. And so I would do things like just repeat his middle name to him over and over and over again because he hated his middle name. So I would just use his full name and be like, Kyle Hayden. And he hated the name Hayden, which is the family name. And yeah, I would just say it over and over again, and he would freak out. Or like I would sing in the back of the car on a road trip, just like sing over and over and over again. And like, he'd be like, I need to stop singing. And so then of course I would do it like louder and longer.
That sounds like my husband, even now with his sisters. Like, he knows exactly the thing to just irritate the crap out of them. And so he will do it.
Except, see, now I'm like, I'm an oldest. But then it's funny because this is actually what my daughter does. And she's the youngest. And she does this to her brothers who have absolutely they have no chill at all.
Outnumbered.
Yeah. And they're, yeah. And so she'll do the thing. And I'm like, I know you're doing it to annoy them though.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get in trouble for singing. And I'm like, that was totally that's totally what I used to say. And yes, you can, because I know what you're doing.
Yeah. Like, there's nothing quite as, like, they say you turn into your mom or whatever. And there are times where I'll, like, feel like, oh my God, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a dad, whatever. But there is nothing quite as horrifying as watching your child
Yeah.
like watching someone else do the annoying thing that you do, or do my kids when I'm telling them not to do something. So like, no, I can't even like do it, but they just like, and I'm like, I can just hear myself.
I will say, having just been to your house a couple months ago, the funniest thing that I've ever seen was when your oldest son said, that's a hard pass.
Yeah, they just, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, you're your mom.
Yeah. They are. I mean, I will just literally say it in like my tone. They say it the way I say it. It's
the true horror is when my daughter says things that are like, because like, I'm not going to say that I'm like, I like to think of myself as an enigma wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in, I don't know, knitted goods in a blanket. But like, because I'm like, I'm for sure like a little bit of I'm a country girl. Like, that's how I was raised, but I'm also not the hardiest of specimens. Like, I don't like to be cold. I do like my comfort. So I'm like, there are things that are like I would say that I'm not entirely consistent in my behavior, because I'm a little bit of a wimp, but I'm also like, I was raised in the country and I was raised doing certain things and being exposed to certain things. So I'm like, I am, but I'm not, kind of a fragile flower. But when my daughter starts to sound like the whinier version of me, I'm like, oh, like, I was kind of kidding when I said that, only kind of, but like, can you not repeat that? Because it sounds horrendous. Like, ugh, I need to sit down. I don't. Like, it turns into Alexis from Schitt's Creek. Ew, David. Oh, no. Like, that has to stop. Okay. I want to know, like, I need to hear, like, quirky family history stories. Because I know we have a couple between us.
Well, so probably, like, the most unique family thing is that my maternal grandfather owned an antique airplane airport. Like, he lives on an airport, or the land around the airport, and like has antique planes, and they have an association and all this stuff, a museum and a library, and it's all about antique planes. And he built this like in the, I want to say 60s. So it's been like the family business since then. And then they have like a fly-in every year, where like all these antique airplane enthusiasts fly in, and like they have a grass runway. They don't use radios or like it would have been in like the 50s. Now
I
there's like,
sincerely didn't know people could just have airports until I met you.
I know. Well, like,
it's very odd.
My grandpa owns an airport, and it's not. We all have like a vision of like an actual like international airport, even a small like city airport. Like you're still. I don't know how to explain. Like it's not like what you would imagine. Like it looks like a farm, but instead of like farm animals and farm equipment, it's like antique airplanes. So like small biplane, like open cockpit airplanes. But like they've got a library all about with antique airplane books. They have a museum all about antique airplanes. And like my grandpa, like in Iowa, like he's kind of like, if you care about antique airplanes, you probably know who my grandpa is. But that's
Wasn't he credited in a movie also? And I can't remember which one. We were just talking about it.
The Rocketeer.
I love that movie.
I know, I do too.
And now I feel like we have a bizarre connection from before we had a connection.
It's true. But yeah, like he's an expert in antique planes. So that's like his claim to fame. And like my uncles and my one cousin on that side, they all work there and keep the airport going and live there. So yeah, that's kind of my quirky living family.
I feel like, I feel like my cousins are very interesting people. I have a cousin that was on, sorry, I'm eating a cookie now. I got hungry and it was sitting there. I'm a very classy lady. I have a cousin that was in the top 10 on, Taiwan Idol. Yeah, she does not speak Chinese. She sang in Chinese. But she's a singer. Yeah. And she does a lot of like cruise ships and things like that and like travels around. And like, that's how my mom got to meet Sean Astin. And I was really jealous about that because I love Lord of the Rings and he played Samwise Gamgee. And she was like, I'm at this thing like that your cousin's singing at and I'm at Sean Astin's table. So she like literally hung out with him and Isaiah Washington all night, which I just think is kind of strange. Sean Astin was very polite. Isaiah Washington less so, which I feel like no one's that surprised to hear.
I don't know who Isaiah Washington is.
He was on Grey's Anatomy and he like kind of famously got written off because he was unkind.
There's some old movie star that went there. I can pick Steve McQueen has been to the airport and peed on a fence there, allegedly, as the story goes.
Allegedly.
So April said, I discovered I have an ancestor that came to the U.S. from England with the very first printing press. So that's cool.
That's very cool.
I love genealogy, I think, for a lot of different reasons. Cool stuff like that. Like, I found out that if I trace far back enough, and I say that with the caveat of, like, you never know how, once you get past a certain point, you don't know how accurate records are.
Yeah.
And she's always telling me that, like, some records might not even be true, even though they're, like, records. But anyway, that I had some ancestors. It's interesting to me when you can like connect it to history like that, but I also like just trying to kind of figure out, I mean, this is the writer in me, figure out like who they were, what kind of people they are, and like kind of fill in the gaps. And that's why I love like the genealogy aspect of stuff, because it's just like, it's more stories. They just happen to be like connected to you. Linda said she saw The Rocketeer on Disney Plus. I made my husband rewatch it with me on Disney Plus. He was not impressed, but I loved that movie.
I loved it when I rewatched it again, and I was like, oh, this is why my mom watched it like 1,000 times. He's super cute.
He's super cute.
But yeah. I was like a little bit young to fully understand. I was like, my mom really liked this movie and George of the Jungle. We watched it a lot of times. I'm looking for George of the Jungle to go on Disney Plus. But I was going to say, so my, like, that I pieced together, like, with stories from my grandma and kind of online records is that I guess he would be my great-great-grandfather, Angus, was a little bit of a drifter. Like, per all the census records we found, he was a lot of different places. He was, for a time, I actually think he was in Nebraska at a bed and breakfast. Or not a bed and breakfast, a boarding house. So there was a couple different censuses where he was at this boarding house, and at some point had married the daughter of the people who owned the boarding house and had like 4 children with her.
I love that though. Like, I mean, like that's a story in and of itself. Like,
Yeah,
the boarding house lady's daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that was all just from like, oh, now he's married to her. Like I could see that she was the daughter, and now but then she died, and he left the children there with his in-laws, and went off to Washington to search for the Flying Dutchman, which, if you don't know, is a ghost ship, mythical ship, and also sent papers in, like he like. Sent conscription papers or whatever in for like every war up to like Vietnam, and he was very old. And I'm like, you can find like military documents for this guy going up to when he's like 80. He was trying, so he was an interesting individual, and I don't think was and so his son, who he did not raise, was Hayden, who my brother's middle name is after, and Hayden was a painter. Like, he was not off looking for the Flying Dutchman. He painted nice paintings, and is my grandpa's dad. And I don't know whatever happened to, like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know that much about that, like, part of my family, because, like, my, like, grandpa never had his siblings around or anything. So it's like, it's all very kind of concentrated into the immediate family. But yeah, I thought that was really kind of interesting. I was like, we're eccentrics, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny if you think about, like, back then, like, so both of my grandfathers, like, their siblings, like, went off and did not live in the same place. Our mothers, their siblings, like, all stayed kind of, like, in the same place, or at least most of them did. And so I obviously know more about, like, had siblings, so I was older, because they both passed away, but they also didn't live close. Where, like, my grandmother talked to her sister every day on the phone, like, every day, even though they lived like 15 minutes apart from each other. So, like, but you think about, like, how hard it would have been to keep in touch.
Yeah.
Before the internet, even before, before phones, like, you would just sort of have to kind of, if you moved away, lose touch with those people, and then those stories don't get necessarily down.
Yeah, I think that's very, like, kind of interesting. And I have, like, more of an awareness, like, funnily enough, my mom's family, who moved from Kansas, like, I have a little bit more of an awareness of, like, that family that they left behind, and, like, her parents' siblings, like my great aunts and uncles. My middle name is after my mom's aunt, who died when she was 13 of tuberculosis. So she never knew her, and she was, like, in, like, quarantine for a lot of her childhood. Like, she had to leave the house, and she was in, like, a sanatorium or whatever, and sanitarium, I don't know. So it's very sad, but there's a picture of her, and she's one of the few people that I kind of resemble. So I like the name and the connection, because she's got kind of a sad story.
Like, the next generation was named after someone who died really young. My grandmother's name is Wealthy, and she was named after her dad's sister, who died when she was very young, very tragically. And then I found that name, like, up through the generation, because Wealthy's kind of
yeah, it's a different name.
But, like, that was, like, clearly a family name for them. No, I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. But so actually, I was doing some research, because one side of my family is very German, and I was trying to understand these census records that were in German and why these names kept showing up. And it was actually a very German tradition, I guess. Like, if your child died in England or whatever, you would just reuse that name.
Oh, wow.
You keep reusing that name until someone lived. And
That's
then
wild.
also there was this whole thing about, like, every German boy was And so you would go by your middle name, but everybody's first name was Johann.
Oh, wow.
Every girl's first name was like Anna Marie or something like that. So like the censuses get kind of hard to follow because you could have that, especially when they move to the States. Like you don't know looking at their first name or their.
I wonder. I mean, that's interesting because my mom's parents, who are from the Midwest, both went by their middle names.
And my grandmother on my mom's side, she went by her middle name. Although I have a story for that, and this is one of those ones where I remember my grandmother telling me this story. But when I started doing research, like I found some things that make me think that story is actually not correct. So I don't know if she like misremembered it or if she was told a lie. Because so anyway, her name was Eleanor Lorraine, and she went by Lorraine. And her story was that her dad, who fought in World War I, was stationed in Alsace-Lorraine in France during World War I, and that's where he was actually injured. Eleanor was her mom's choice, and like it just happened that her dad got his way and she went by Lorraine. But I actually found in some census records his mom, so like her grandmother, had a daughter named Eleanor Lorraine who died like at some point like very young.
Wow.
So like I actually think she was named after this other sibling of his. And so I don't know if she made that up or he made that up or what.
Interesting.
But clearly it was like, you know, a family name. And my grandfather on my other side actually went by his middle name, but that's because his dad was named Frederick, and then he named his son Frederick Martin, so my grandpa went by Martin to avoid confusion. And then actually, that's my oldest middle name is Frederick. So we used all family names to name our.
Yeah, well, my mom's dad was named Early Ray, so I mean, he may have just not gone by Early for the reason that he was named Early, but he did go by Ray. And then my grandma, like I said, was Lila Pauline, and she went by Pauline. But I'm like, Lila's a perfectly fine name, so I don't know.
It is funny. I don't know. I guess it's just I don't know what that is. Clearly, it's like it's a thing that people go by their middle name. Yeah. Like I get it more with you have the first name as your father, like you go by your middle names to avoid confusion.
Yeah.
Which is actually funny. My husband and my father-in-law have the same name, and they just go by their name, like they're just both the same name. But there are a lot of people that I have found like in census stuff where they clearly go by their middle name, and I do wonder if there is something to that. I mean, they weren't all German, but I wonder if that's...
No, I just wonder, because there were a lot of Germans, if that became more of a regional kind of tradition. Like that, that just kind of would be interested to know that, because that's, really interesting, because my family that's from the Midwest, that's what they did. And like I said, obviously there could be a factor like having your first name be Early. So. Right.
You might want to go by something else.
Yeah.
I will say, my grandpa, always said that his given name was Bobby, which I don't think is necessarily true. And that he had it legally changed to Robert so that he could be a little bit more, even though he goes by Bob.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think names are fascinating. I think the history of names is fascinating. I gave my kids all family names. My middle name is my mom's maiden name. That is also my sister's first name. My sister likes to say that they ran out of names, so they had to reuse my middle name, which is also now my youngest middle name. But I like those family connections like that.
Yeah, we have no family history with our names. I mean, this is just true. I think it's okay for me to like tell this story. I'm like, some people are still living, so you've got to tread carefully. But my husband's grandparents have passed, so I think it's fine. But my middle name's Elizabeth. I'm named after the sister who passed of tuberculosis when she was a kid. So common name. My husband's name's Haven, which is a different name. All his siblings have really different names, but his middle name's Maurice. And like I thought, so he knew that he was named. Well, he's named after. I'm trying to think of it. Oh yeah, so he's named after his grandfather, who he never knew. But there's a whole story about how his dad grew up thinking that Maurice was like a family friend. And so, okay, so here's the story. The last name Yates is not a family name because my husband's grandma, when she had his dad, who's like vastly younger than his siblings, and like, so she was a lot older when she had him. She was in her 40s, and this was back in the 50s. So that was, and she basically, when she had him, she told the people at the hospital that she didn't know who the father of the baby was, that he was some Navy man named Sergeant Yates. So that's the name on the birth certificate, because she lied, because she didn't want them to go after this guy for child support, because I think he had another family. And so he would come and visit sometimes, but my father-in-law thought that he was a family friend. And didn't find out until later that it was his dad. Because at a certain point, he was this is what he just told us, that at a certain point he was kind of being rebellious and getting into a little bit of trouble, and his mom basically called up his biological dad and was like, you need to come set your son straight because he's causing drama. So that was kind of how he found out. Anyway, so that's what my husband's middle name is, after the grandfather. And then that grandfather died really, really young. And so not only did my father-in-law never really get to know him, but my husband never got to know his grandpa. But that's the whole. So we have strange family names from people that we will never know. And then we did not give our kids family names. But there's not a lot of there's no naming after in my family. I don't think anyone liked their names well enough to do that.
It's funny that there's not a lot, all our middle names of me and my sisters are family related in some way. But our first names are all just names, well, except my youngest sister. But my husband's family, his dad gave him his name, but it's not anything else. But a lot of us, this generation, we all use family names. My sister-in-law used a family name. My sister, her husband's family's tradition is that if it's a boy, he gets the dad's name as his middle name. So they did that. But we're really the only ones who hardcore went for, we will use family names. Although we rejected some because I can't remember what name it was. My husband was like, I only know jerks named this name. I can't remember what it was.
Well, my great-grandmothers, 3 of them were Maud, Mamie, and Myrtle. So my parents were hard pass.
I love that stuff. That my grandpa's mom was a twin, and her name was Ida, and her twin's name was Ada. So they were Ada and Ida, and I love it so much.
That's fantastic.
Year 80, but I love that. I love stuff. I love crazy names. I found in my grandpa's side, there was they named all the boys after presidents for a while. So they were George Washington Taylor, Andrew Jackson Taylor, and then one was I can't remember. I'm gonna have to go back and look and see which president it was. But it was a really obscure president, Franklin Pierce Taylor or Rutherford Hayes Taylor or something
that. Is really funny. What I love is I got this whole printout from my mom's family. That's the whole family history, and they are there's some Cherries. Cherry is one of the last names, and then Giesland, which is means Goslin or something. So it's English from all this stuff. Anyway, so there's lots of names in there that are kind of interesting, and then and we are related to John Hancock, but it's a different John Hancock.
That's the same with us and Zachary Taylor. My grandpa was convinced forever that he was related to the president Zachary Taylor. No.
It's a different one.
Evidence was no. Or because his dad's name was Poe, he was I think we're related to Edgar Allan Poe. And I'm no, that's not really, no.
My grandpa swears up and down we're related to Martha Washington, but there's no proof. I'm we're quite low rent and have not been in this country all that long, so I don't know.
It is funny. It's hard because we have a lot of very common names:
Yeah.
Taylor, Anderson, Johnson. Like I have an ancestor I can't trace because his name is John Anderson, and it's like who came from Sweden at the time. Every John Anderson came from Sweden.
Yeah.
And in Swedish stuff, so last name Johnson because you're John.
Oh, right, right.
So it's impossible to trace that. It's probably not impossible. It's impossible for someone with my patience level
Yeah.
to trace that stuff.
That's like something happened with the spelling of our last name, and it was actually pretty recent because you can't go back like 2 generations past my mom's dad on there. Like we can get like using Find a Grave and stuff, we can go really far. You can go really far back, but like her dad's side, it just like disappears.
There, I found a funny thing on my husband's side because his mom's something was, I want to say, and so they moved here, and their last name was like Luzinski or something like that. But he just let his kids spell it however they wanted. He was like, your name that when you go up to heaven, like your name's not going to matter. And so like all of his kids like had a different spelling of this name, so it's really hard to like trace and stuff. And like the thing about census records, which is like our number one thing that we can look at, is that you're dependent on the census taker actually writing their name down right.
And that so is a mixed bag.
Things are spelled wrong or their handwriting's impossible to read.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the caveat with the witches. Like this line I can trace back to the convicted witches, but you just never know when like a mistake might have been made or the wrong.
I did find the grave of that particular ancestor of yours.
Yeah.
So she was definitely there because I went to Salem it was July because it was terrible and I got like heat stroke and like wished that I was dead. So that was like a very bad choice. That was I was in Boston before RWA, before I saw you in New York, and just telling this for everybody else, like Jackie Ashenden was with me from New Zealand, and like it was 104 degrees or something like that, and the humidity is just vile. And it is not that humid in Oregon. Like, I don't understand the way that the heat index works. It's the way that it's the heat of the day peak and the way it doesn't cool down that I'm really not used to with that level of humidity in the air. So I'm like, I'm expecting a certain thing because I'm like, it can be 104 here. Like, it gets hot here, but it just feels very different. And we're going to get like a mountain breeze. It's going to be cool. There's going to be something that like breaks it up. Like, I took the ferry to Salem. The wind coming in off the Atlantic Ocean was not cool. It was not good. And I was like, how am I out on the water and I'm still hot? That is just not how it works where I'm from. So I wandered around Salem all day. And by the time I got the ferry back, I was like dual wielding Diet Coke. It was terrible. And anyway, so I found your ancestor's grave and stuff. And it's like very kind of creepy and poignant, and like because people leave like lengths of rope and flowers and things on all the graves of the people who were executed. It's very Salem is interesting because it's very like a very big mixture of like the sensationalism of kind of like witches and witchcraft, and then like this kind of deep, very sad history. And I love the history part of it. So it's just kind of, that was interesting. But I was going to say something else. Oh yeah. My favorite thing about, like getting that little printout of my family history was, that there was like, it told me a lot about my mom's family, because there were all these things that was like, so-and-so died of a cold. And then you find out that he had like pneumonia for 4 months and then like got a cold, but they like said he died of a cold. And I was like, that makes him sound kind of soft. That wasn't really the whole story. But the best one was the guy that they said died of a bruise. So he was in the cavalry for the Union Army and was pursuing an enemy and jumped his horse over like a ravine, and the horse fell on him and crushed his chest, and they literally put that he died of a bruise. And I was like, that feels not fair. Like, dust yourself off, John. It's a bruise.
That's the Midwest for you, Macy.
It's true. That was indeed my Midwestern family. They were like, pick yourself up, buddy. How bad can it be?
My favorite story is not mine, but my husband's, because his grandmother has kept like amazing, meticulous records. She gave us 2 giant binders of like her side and her husband's side, my grandfather-in-law's side, like history, like obituaries and, you know, addresses of where they lived. I have like people whose dead social security numbers, like really meticulous. And then this one ancestor of my husband's, and I can't remember how this woman relates, but the story was about how she died when she was sitting out on her porch churning butter and got struck by lightning. And so, like, she died churning butter via lightning.
That feels essentially Midwestern.
And my husband is, like, so afraid of electricity. Like, he hates changing light bulbs. And, like he actually is like, I'm like, why are you such a baby about, like, he doesn't want to be any, and it's very just ingrained. And I always just assumed it was because, like, he sort of just about certain things, and that and my grandma was actually kind of paranoid about electricity. Like, we weren't allowed to shower, like, while a storm was going on. But then you have to wonder, like, is there some sort of ingrained thing for him? Because, like, that was, like, either you can go woo-woo with it and say, like, shared memory, or you can just say, like, since that happened, the family was, like, very obsessed with telling, like, the next generation, like, don't mess with lightning.
I like the idea that we might inherit.
I do too.
I like the idea of that. And because you have a little bit of a phobia that I feel we found a reason for.
Oh, I already forgot my phobia is I do not like bridges. I always, that's my mom used to take this rattly old bridge, and I was always terrified that it was just going to give out because it was just held together by nothing. But I already forgot that story. What I found.
It was some ancestor of yours that their car went off a bridge, or they did, and they drowned.
Yeah,
like the bridge broke or something. Yeah, no, I didn't, because I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I did find something like that, and it did make me wonder, like, is that, you know, echoes of
generational.
I love that stuff. Anything generational, I'm here for it.
Yes, totally. Well, I think it's interesting how you are always, like, we've talked about this a lot recently, just because we were kind of talking about the, like, in A Cowboy for All Seasons, and, like, our own grandparents and kind of things like that. And then the book that I was just writing, like, I did borrow bits and pieces of family history, and I was like, I do feel like, if nothing else, like, we're always having, like, conversations with the past, and I feel like you can learn so much when you do. And, like, that even if there were ancestors you didn't meet, it's the way that you learn from them. And I just kind of like that idea, that even when someone's gone, you can still learn from their story and from the things that they went through and from the things that you learn about them. Like, everything that your family leaves behind for you, like, is like a chance for a connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really interesting. Like, you start to see threads of things that happen in ways that people deal with things, and then you start to wonder, like, I mean, I think every family functions in their own very unique way, and we all, like, have to figure out how to function within our own family, and that changes in the generation, and it changes how, you know, we're a lot more mobile than we used to be as a society and stuff like that. And I just think it's fascinating to see those threads, like, you know, happen again or not happen again, and wonder why. It's all I mean, at the end of the day, it's because we're writers, and it's all stories and how things connect, and that's what we think about a lot.
Yes. And obviously now we have made, like, the world's longest video, and could probably keep talking about family stuff for forever, but we will release you guys into the wild, and we'll be back on Tuesday. Probably, I'm not going to commit to a topic. I'm going to let it be free flowing, because We have an idea, but it may change between now and then. We don't know. We're obviously incredibly wild and crazy as we sit here with our coffee telling a story, old family story. Nicole and I might just straight up be like reincarnated 90-year-old women.
Well, I should tell the story about my son.
Oh, yes.
Who,
Please tell the story about your son.
okay, so this actually kind of creeped me out a little bit. So my son has blue eyes, which obviously did not come from me. Either. He has green eyes. Like, there's blue eyes families. My grandma had blue eyes. My father-in-law has blue eyes. But anyway, he was looking at himself in the mirror when he was, I can't remember how old he was. It was a couple years ago, and he was only 8. So he was little. And he was like, I have green eyes. And I was like, no, you don't. Like, you have blue eyes. Like, are you color? You know, sitting here thinking, like, is he colorblind? Does he not understand? Because his eyes are blue. It's not like that in between thing. His eyes are blue. And I told the story to my mom, and she was like, you know, your grandma always said she had green eyes, but her eyes were blue. And I was like, okay, that is a little much. Like, that's a little creepy. Because that's just so weird. Like, who's going to say their eyes are green when they're actually blue? Like, that doesn't make sense. So, I feel like there was some other thing he did that was like something my grandma did, and I was kind of like, okay. Because, like, she passed away before I got married. So, her spirit's out there somewhere, probably haunting me.
Messing with you.
Child.
She's like, please, Nicole, I got better stuff to do than haunt you.
I doubt it.
All right. That is where we'll leave you. We will see you again on Tuesday. Bye.
Bye.